Progressive Planet is a growing and cash-generating manufacturer of industrial, agricultural, and animal health products and is developing innovative low-carbon solutions for the global cement and agricultural industries. The company just released their fiscal 2024 financial results, which showed growing revenues, margins, and record EBITDA of 1.35 million. CEO Stephen Harpur is here to discuss the prior year's results and outline goals and expectations for the coming year. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. It's Monday, September the 9th. Please remember this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Steve, welcome back. It's been a little while. You've had a busy year. And if I get a little ahead of this, it seems like the work has been well earned, or the results are well earned, as you've got some good results to show. Why don't you walk us through what happened last year? We can talk about that and then move on to expectations and outlook for the coming year.
That sounds great, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time. Your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you've dedicated some of your day to hear our comparison. So what I've done is I've put together some slides with a year over year to really show the progress that we've made and show it by category. So without further ado, I'm going to go on and go to the first slide. So our revenue as a company was flat. We had just over 80,000 more, but during the year, we lost the ability to sell a mineral that we didn't own the mine, but we'd been selling it. It was a diatomaceous earth that we got out of Oregon, and it was quite a significant volume, but we were able to replace that, and we were able to replace that with higher margin sales of our mineral powders from our own mine, specifically from our Red Lake mine in Canada. So we just over 80,000. But I think what's important is that we kept a lot more. So as I go through the revenue, yes, revenue was flat. I will also, when I talk a little further on, talk about how we've really changed our compensation to our salespeople and how we are expecting significant growth in the current fiscal year. So gross margin increased from 26.2% to 30.6%. For those of you who dug deep and read in the MD&A, our fourth quarter was actually up to 34.5%. Industry peers typically are around the 26% margin, so we're doing better than several of our publicly traded peers. I'm not going to mention any names, but we're very proud of that 30.6% gross margin. And if you want to convert that into, you saw that our revenue was flat, but last year we had gross profit of 5.1 million, and this year we had gross profit of 6 million. Sales expenses. I just briefly alluded to sales. So we changed the compensation package to align all of our sales team, and we did a complete, we have a 100% new sales team from this time last year. We had several people leave us, and we provided several people with severance, but we have a completely new sales team. And the compensation has been adjusted to really emphasize growth. So rewarded with a base salary, but very strong compensation for growing the sales versus the prior year, same fiscal quarter. And we finished completing the rebuilding of our sales team in the first quarter of this year. And we're excited to start seeing some of those results.
Steve, just to clarify, you mean the first fiscal quarter of this year, and the first fiscal quarter is July?
Ended July 31st. So we went through a period of a turnover in our sales, our account executives. Everyone who now works for us has a minimum of a bachelor degree or a post-secondary degree with one of our salesperson actually having a master's. Two of our three new salespeople have science degrees. So one has a degree in agronomy and the other in microbiology. So as we were looking to rebuild our sales team, we made it a requirement for new people coming on to have a minimum of a bachelor's degree or more, and to have industry experience with a skew towards a science, bachelor of science for the degree. On the R&D expenses, we saw a decrease of 343,000. This does not mean that we don't take R&D seriously. We spent significant in the prior year in order to protect our IP. Essentially, the value of our IP is wet grinding glass to produce a stronger ground glass pozzolan and utilizing the chemicals that are released in the wastewater to capture CO2 from flue stacks. And as we perfected and matured the actual technology, we let go of some people whose primary job was strictly R&D, and we trimmed our team. And so we did see a decrease, but we have a very, very serious R&D program, and we are, constantly working on alternative cements as well as agricultural products. G&A, again, when you combine two entities, so the combination of the two companies, Progressive Planet Solutions and Absorbent Products, it happened on February of 2022. So in the first year, we had significant duplication of roles, and we had some people that received severance, and we eliminated some positions. It takes time to figure out who is doing what when you merge two entities, but by eliminating duplicate roles and understanding who does what when you merge two corporate cultures, you merge two companies, we really were able to streamline our G&A in the current year. Cash flow from operations. So cash flow from operations in 2023 was 1.6 million. That improved to 2.57 million in 2024. Operational cash flow, that does include what you pay in interest. So that's a very serious number that we think is a good barometer of us improving the entity's performance. And then on income from operations, so we had a loss of 1.14 in the prior year through to 678,000 income from operations in the current fiscal year. So I'm just going to go back and talk about this again. All of these metrics, cash flow from operations, reduction of G&A, income from operations, they all show a trend of improving financial performance. So I've taken the liberty of showing our market cap, and this was as of close on Friday, with the number of shares that we have outstanding today. And in our shares outstanding, we show 849,000 shares that were canceled in June. We did do share buybacks in both July and August. I'm going to put out a news release showing the total amount for August. That number of shares is not reflected here, but if you take our posted shares outstanding, which include shares that are bought back but are not yet canceled, and multiplied it by 9 cents, you get $10.048 million market cap. If you go to our balance sheet and you look at our shareholder equity, you see shareholder equity on our balance sheet of 12.996, or essentially 13 million. So if you look at this number, we are trading significantly below our shareholder equity. I think it's really important for us to say that we don't have any goodwill on our books. When Progressive Planet purchased Absorbent Products for $16.3 million in February of 2022, there was no recording of any goodwill on the transaction. So I think our balance sheet is a good relative indicator of what we see as value. And for those that are on the call, my message is that I think we represent good value right now based on how the market perceives us, even compared to our actual shareholder equity. So with that being said, I'm happy to take any calls, and I'll stop sharing my screen, and then I can see you now, Martin, and you can see me. But sorry, any questions that you have, not calls, sorry.
Yeah, so I just wanted to circle back on last year's. You got higher margins, and I'm curious on for the what was able to drive, like you obviously reduced G&A and so forth, but let's say just on the gross margins, was it like a different time of product mix? Were you able to raise prices? Were you just be able to create better efficiencies so your actual costs were lower? Can you talk about what drove those higher gross margins?
So we've seen a significant growth in our powders that are destined to the US under two different brands. So one is our Red Lake Earth, and that is an animal feed additive. So predominantly used to make feed for chickens. And you can add up to 2% of an anti-caking agent. And Red Lake Earth is a mineral that it's a registered anti-caking agent for animal feeds, and it's organic. It's registered as an organic feed ingredient, so it's OMRI listed. The second one that we're seeing tremendous growth in is in activated barn fresh. Once again, it's an OMRI listed product, so it can be used in organic broiler houses, and it essentially mitigates the formation of ammonia in broiler houses or barns where they grow chickens that are meat birds. And what this does, we have a patent on this until November of 2033 for activated barn fresh. And during COVID, we saw some customers it has two ingredients. It has an organic citric acid and Red Lake diatomaceous earth. It's a very simple product, but nobody else can combine diatomaceous earth with citric acid and sell that in the United States until November of 2033. So during COVID, the price for citric acid skyrocketed. We buy it from China, which produces about 60% globally of citric acid. And so our pricing went up, and we lost some customers, and we had some competitors claim that they had solutions that worked equally as well as ours. And we ended up seeing those customers come back to us. And at the same time, we saw a very significant decrease in our cost for one of those two ingredients, and that's our citric acid. Once the effects of COVID and the cost of shipping and so on reversed. So that was a significant factor for us. We see relatively stable pricing for the citric acid as a commodity going forward, and we see stability in shipping. Nobody can predict the future. The other thing that I should note is that we're continuing to see growth of our U.S. business. It's over 50% of our total business now, and we generate more U.S. dollars than we spend because we sell two of our three biggest products in mostly U.S. dollars, but most of our expenses, including in our sales and our sales expenses. In the past, we historically had U.S. salespeople on the ground in the U.S., paid in U.S. dollars, and we also paid significant amounts of money to pay for their health care as their employer. All of our sales team now resides in Canada, are paid in Canadian dollars, and they essentially market themselves from Canada to sell the products in the US. So that was a good another reason we saw a decrease in our selling expenses. We brought all of our sales team back to Canada.
All right. And essentially, I guess it's less expensive to do that, and through Zoom and travel to trade shows or whatever periodic customer visits, they can manage that just as effectively out of Canada.
Very much so, and it's important for everybody to realize that we are B2B. So we have about 150 customers. We don't sell direct to consumer. In fact, when we took over the business, we did do that, and I stopped all of that business. It was extremely costly for us to package and send out individual packages, and we were competing against distributors. So we sell to distributors, we sell to national chains. One of our biggest customers has 2,400 stores across the US. So we have a very well-known Canadian retailer that has over 700 locations. So we deal and we deal directly with buyers and head office. So that's a very different metric than dealing with the consumer.
All right. It's been what, February of 2022. It's been 2.5 years since you did the acquisitions. In each of those years, you've had sort of restructuring costs and so forth. Obviously, like you said, you can't predict the future, but does everything seem pretty much kind of in place here going forward? So you feel like you've got a good streamlined operation, or do you think there could be more tweaks or a restructuring, so to speak?
No, the restructuring, the combination of entities, that is done. We have our core team of people. So our focus now is on growth in sales and on continued efficiency. And even since fiscal year end, we've started to make investments, and I alluded to those in a shareholder update uh, to increase automation. We have a series of external engineering firms in our offices over the next 3 weeks, working with us on designing product flow for more automation. So our focus going forward is no longer on restructuring. We will continue to be very diligent in watching our costs, and we will now focus our efforts on growing our revenue per employee. So a big metric that's very important to me is the actual revenue generated per employee. Not looking to reduce our employees, I'm looking to increase the revenue per employee. And that can be done primarily with automation and selling more products so that you can, if you have fantastic automation, but you don't have demand, then it's kind of pointless to invest in automation. We are starting to see strong growth in some of our high margin products, and we intend to release our Q1 results a little early, a little earlier than September 30th. We don't have to work with our auditors, so we can control the timing more so of the release of our next financial results for Q1, which again ended July 31st, and those are supposed to be out within 60 days of your quarter end. So we're looking at around the 23rd, 24th to release those results. And now we're into Q2, and we are very much focused on automation and being able to generate more revenue per employee.
Are you able to, I don't think you gave a specific number in your financials, but just sort of a ballpark number of the sort of restructuring costs, severance costs, and so forth that were accrued last year? And I guess those presumably wouldn't be this year, so that would be at least one step up.
I think it would be rather than get into those specific costs, if we can make the presentation public as part of the YouTube, people can see in the fiscal year that ended April 30th, 2024, If you look at the categories for selling expenses, you look at the categories for G&A for the year that ended, those represent a far more realistic quantification of the current year than the year before.
Okay. All right. So they're improving. All right. Um, and you're generating excess cash here. You've been doing share buybacks. Should investors expect ongoing share buybacks through the remainder of the year? Is that sort of an ongoing policy?
So to be determined.
Okay.
Uh, so we still are trading at significantly below our book value per share or our shareholders' equity, but we are looking at some significant investments in equipment that lasts for very long periods of time. So as we grow our business, we one of the challenges that we have right now is when we grind mineral powders. We have two different powders. We have bentonite clay and diatomaceous earth. We have one grinding circuit. So in order for us to be able to grind both at once, we need a second circuit. So we literally have engineers from the US. Sometimes because Canada is relatively small as a country with respect to our industrial base, sometimes we actually have to go to the US to get the specialty knowledge. So we have engineers coming in to assist in designing, plumbing in a second Raymond roller mill. And that's a very efficient vertical mill for grinding powders. And they're coming to our shop next week. So we do anticipate needing to invest capital for growth, and that is growth that will increase our revenue per employee. The vertical Raymond roller mill that we have right now, it was built in 1947. We bought it in 2004. We did a retrofit on it last year, but these are large hunks of steel that don't wear out, and they have some wearing parts, some moving parts that wear out. So this kind of equipment, it lasts. The robot that we have right now, it's 17 and a half years old, and it still works fantastic. So there are parts to it that we replace. So we are looking at expanding our use of robotics. We are looking at the reduction of humans lifting bags that are 40 pounds or 44 pounds or 50 pounds and having machines do that. We don't think that it's the best use of our human capital to have them doing repetitive lifting. And that does not decrease the number of jobs. It decreases the type of activity that's done by your back. And we have an internal employee handbook policy to always promote from within. And so people are already trained in how our plants operate. And we have numerous examples of people that started as laborers and then they became plant operators, and then they came into the millwright program. Our head millwright just celebrated last week 30 years of service with us, and he didn't start as our head millwright. So we are looking to spend money. We do have large amounts of unused debt facilities with Bank of Montreal. We have an operating line of credit that has nothing on it. And we have over $3 million of room on that operating line. We have term equipment loans that were put in place during the acquisition that we did not utilize. And then if I could just segue into the other thing that I'm very excited about is it was very painful for us when we had floating rate 25-year money and we saw 500 basis points of increase in prime. But we've now seen 75 points decrease. And every time we see a 25% decrease in prime, that's almost $16,000 in interest that we save each year on our long-term debt. And the only debt that we have of any substance is the one-term facility that's at prime plus 75 points with Bank of Montreal.
All right. I think we've covered The I'm just looking at questions here on the past year. Before we move on to more sort of forward looking of your more innovative or innovation growth projects, is there anything else you want to sort of wrap up or highlight out of the last year?
No, I think there was a question on my insider trading.
Sure. Yeah. Well, like, how aligned are you with shareholders? Are you just cashing a paycheck here, or do you how much have you put money into this, and what's your share position?
So I've bought every share that I own, and progressively each year I've increased my position. So I've seen some, every maybe once every 3 or 4 months I'll look at the chat rooms, and I saw some people, and there's a misinformation. Somebody talked about me having less than 1 million shares. I own shares both personally and through my company, Stephen Harpur Inc. My total share position is over 2.3 million. And I started on January 2nd, 2018 with 0 shares. So I've bought every share that I own. In June of 2024, privately, I transferred 300,000 shares to my wife. It wasn't done in the markets. I just moved them internally as a estate planning. I have 3 daughters of various ages. One is in the middle of university, and two that are, one of at least the two will attend university. So I have RESPs for my daughters that I buy and sell as required to do so as they go through their education, or I plan for their education. And I add periodically small amounts to my RSP. But I am not a wealthy man, and I won't be buying or selling any large chunk of stock in the next year. My goal is to see this company build its value, and I do have a very healthy option package as well. And I intend to increase my holdings in the company by exercising options as I build the value of this company.
All right. All right. You are aligned with shareholders there. Excellent. Looking into the future and your innovation projects, can you give us an update on the pause glass and what's happening there? And just there are several questions here on this. I'll just sort of discuss the topic, and then we can fill in any things that you miss with specific questions.
For
So
sure.
how are things?
So I need to be cautious. We have various applications for non-dilutive funding with various entities that we have been pursuing over the last 2 years. And as we sit and wait for responses to these various non-dilutive applications for funding, I'm not allowed to say the names of the entities that we are in application with. It's part of the rules and regulations. But we have been very, very busy seeking non-dilutive funding for a pause glass plant. While we're waiting for this, we have begun to acquire capital equipment, and there are two different costs to build a pilot plant. If we are to take post-consumer glass direct from where it is collected with the bottle caps and with plastic and with aluminum necks on the bottle, there is a significantly higher investment in the pilot plant for the cleaning up of this glass. This technology is 20 years plus old. The technology which we have sought to protect globally is on taking that cleaned up glass and wet grinding it to produce ground glass pozzolan, and our form of that is pause glass. We are capable today. We have purchased a significant tonnage of clean glass. We have purchased a grinding apparatus for wet grinding. We've purchased the pumps to be utilized for wet grinding. And we currently have started communication with our landlord for permission to actually build a wet grind pause glass pilot plant in Kamloops. Concurrently, we have applied for non-dilutive funding to enable us to invest in the technology to actually clean up the dirty glass. And we announced in 2023 that we were the second only approved vendor by Recycle BC to receive that glass. So we can receive a large amount of this glass, but the cost to clean it up to get it into the point where we can wet grind it, that's old technology. It is a significant investment. But for us to say that we are starting from scratch with the post-consumer glass and bringing it through to the finished product, in order for us to do what's called an LCA, or life cycle assessment, from beginning to end, we would need to have the entire plant. I can suggest to you that by the end of this fiscal year, if we do not have non-dilutive funding to build the entire plant, including the old technology on the front end and our new patent pending IP that we have globally filed to protect, and we have received a favorable opinion from the International Patent Office on the novelty of our wet grinding. If we do not, by the end of this fiscal year, have non-dilutive funding arranged for the front end, we will proceed with wet grinding of clean glass. Now, the clean glass, we have been receiving it for about 15 years. We sell our own cleaned up glass right now as a product called CanBlast, and it is sandblasting media. And we have that made by the only other company in BC that is authorized by Recycle BC to receive that glass. And we've actually gone and bought, we got about 40 tons of cleaned up glass sitting, waiting for us to grind and, deliver to Lafarge as pause glass. So one way or another, by the end of this fiscal year, we will have clear direction as to whether we are building an entire plant with the front end technology to clean up the glass, or simply proceeding with grinding already cleaned up glass into pause glass powder, and then utilizing the wastewater to capture CO2 from our flue stack. We've already built flue stack contactor. We have it on site to harvest flue gas. We have the wet grinding equipment, the pumps. We have it all bought and paid for sitting on site.
All right, you've already done a bunch of investment then, obviously. Are you able to, at this point, give sort of broad metrics at how much CapEx either Plan A or Plan B would be?
I'm not going to get into that today.
Okay.
As I said, we have various applications with various entities for non-dilutive funding. And I'm not going to get into those numbers while those applications are in place. But we expect that in Q2 or Q3 we will know whether we are successful. So we will know well before the end of the year whether we have been successful in application for non-dilutive funding.
All right. Okay. Your agreement with Lafarge, are you still working with them? The question here is, what help is Lafarge still giving you?
So Lafarge has been very generous with their time. I met with two executives from Lafarge on Friday on video conference. Essentially, they are waiting for us to produce product. And as I just alluded to, we went ahead and invested in the equipment for us to make pause glass without cleaning up the front end post-consumer glass. So Lafarge has been patient with us. They have made available their testing facilities for us for pause glass in Seattle, and we maintain constant communication. There's a 10-year legal agreement with Lafarge that we signed. So they have been a patient partner. They inquire frequently, and nothing has changed with respect to the relationship.
All right. All right. Shifting gears here a little bit, you're also working on some longer term initiatives in the agricultural space. Could you talk about what you're doing there and what how the outlook is with that right now.
For sure. So we've seen growth in agricultural products. So Red Lake Earth, the anti-caking feed additive that is or an approved organic feed ingredient, activated barn fresh, our patented product. We are focusing our ag products on those where amorphous silica is the active ingredient. Early on, a few years ago, we started talking early about products under development. And then I've stopped doing that until we are more sure of market acceptance. So we do have products under development, working with the CFIA, working on grow trials and so on. But I have not started talking about these products under development until we are more certain about their viability. So as opposed to talking about lots of things early stage, we're going to talk about fewer things further when they've developed further. But we have been actively deploying brain power and capital towards agricultural products under development. And our focus going forward is to utilize the asset that we have, which is we manage silicates. So we have various clays and earths, and the active ingredient is silica, and it's amorphous silica, the kind that doesn't give you silicosis, crystalline silica. Glass is another example of that. So as we continue to develop more products, they're focused on silicates. We do have one product in development right now that we are looking at its efficacy in agriculture, and I'll talk more about it into the future. But we are not sitting dormant or idle as it relates to these products. The other thing about the development of products, we've seen a significant growth in the sale of our activated barn fresh and in our Red Lake Earth. So I spoke a little earlier about needing to invest capital. So on activated barn fresh, we need to invest capital to have robots palletize our product. Right now, it's being palletized by our staff, physically stacking pallets. The same thing is true of Red Lake Earth, and we are getting so busy with them. So there's a balance between developing new products and extracting more value from successful products that you already have. So while we are continuing to develop agricultural products, new products, our focus is on utilizing our amorphous silica as the building block. But concurrently, we are seeing tremendous growth, and specifically in two products, Red Lake Earth and activated barn fresh. And activated barn fresh still has another 9 years under patent. So we are allocating resources to being able to make activated barn fresh and Red Lake Earth faster and more tons per hour. And that has been a significant focus. And again, alluding to engineers coming next week and a second grinding system, et cetera, we are spending significant resources, brain power, and plan to spend money on capital to be able to make more tons per hour of finished product in existing ag applications. And that's very much a focus right now as well.
All right. Okay, so the agriculture news isn't imminent. They're still relatively early stage, but you're pushing on, and we'll get news on those as they get de-risked and they get closer to market. That's the
Yes.
All right. We have a question here. Anything about pyrogenesis?
So we're still waiting for a final report from Pyrogenesis to officially close out phase one. We have begun discussions on the construction of a pilot plant. That's a pretty detailed piece of engineering. We've actually asked that there be another sort of phase 1B where they can generate more powder for us. We only got 500 grams as part of our first contract. Before we would proceed to a full pilot plant, we would like to have the kilograms of test material for a lot more testing. So under phase one, the final contract, we are to receive a final report. We have not received that yet. That will officially finalize phase one. We have requested a price for Pyrogenesis to produce kilograms of additional material at additional cost to us for additional testing. With 500 grams, there's only so much testing you can do. And with the first contract, it was 500 grams of material. You use over 100 grams every time you make a set of mortar cubes for testing. So we don't have enough material left to do any meaningful testing, and we are awaiting pricing to receive additional product. Pyrogenesis has a reactor that we use, but there are other people that book that reactor as well. So we have to wait for scheduling for them to produce more powder for us as the next phase of our relationship with them. And then after we receive kilograms of powder, the next step is full pricing out of a pilot plant.
All right. We've covered a lot of topics here. There is one question going back to operations of existing products. How has your backlog grown over the current year? Can you comment on the size of the current backlog?
I'm not going to provide any information in this call that I don't provide in a public setting, but it is a concern of ours that we have to increase our ability to produce powders in particular in order for us to meaningfully grow the company. And at some points, we've had as much as over 50 trucks for one customer of powder in backlog historically in the last year. And the investment to increase our capacity is meant to address that. But I'm not going to talk about what our backlog is today until I put it out in a full public setting.
All right, but demand is growing, it sounds like.
We have seen a significant growth in our powder business. It's over 65% in the last 3 years, and this is high margin business. So we actually, when we were unable to sell a diatomaceous earth that the property changed owners and the new owner was no longer willing to sell the product, we replaced that business. So while we were flat on the year at 19.6 versus 19.5, the composition of our business was selling more of our own powders, our own minerals, and less of third party. The other thing that I didn't talk about when we had a flat year is we had a very unseasonably warm winter last year, and we did not sell much in the way of ice melt. Traditionally, we do well on ice melt in the winter, and so we had virtually no sales of ice melt in the fiscal 2024 versus the prior year.
I think we are wrapping things up here. Steve, any final comments or perspectives you want to say before we wrap this up?
Sure. The market has an appetite for constant updates on development of intellectual property. The real world is that it takes a long time between events that you can actually talk about. And we have a very, very active product development mindset, and we are constantly working on improving existing products and developing new. and we are constantly assessing opportunities for our next acquisition, whether that be big or small. And we have invested a significant amount of time and effort in growing both my personal and the company's LinkedIn profiles. And we are now having people reach out to us that there's no other way we would ever see opportunities. I get opportunities from India, from Africa, from Asia, and there is a constant review and assessment of products and opportunities, as well as a constant, both our labs, we are constantly undergoing testing and looking to refine and improve. And as we mature as a company, I'm hoping that we will be able to systematically continue to release more news to that effect. But the fact that we haven't made a lot of announcements does not mean that we are not focused on product innovation. On the contrary, we are very much focused on product innovation.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap it up. Steve, thank you very much. That was excellent. Glad to see you've got a lot going on, and you're definitely executing well here. So thank you very much, and talk to you again soon, and have a great day.
Thank you.